Yep, good to go.
All right. So, hi everyone. I'm Isiel Johnson, and I'm going to be your chair for the round. We would like to start with proceedings, and I would like to confirm if all teams have their speakers present. So, kindly unmute and confirm one member from the team if all members of the team are present and ready for the round.
Yeah, we're all present.
We're all present as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. So, let me quickly get the motion and read it. All right, great. So open Octofinals motion. The motion reads, this house supports the recognition of debate academies as institutions in institution-based tournaments. Example, National High School Tournament, WUDC, etc. I now invite the Prime Minister to commence the debate. Here.
Can I confirm that I'm visible and audible?
Yes, you are visible and audible.
Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. In a world where debate is on high demand and these competitions are getting more and more prestige, we believe that it's not only good, but it is necessary to recognize these debate academies as institutions in institution-based tournaments. Okay, so first of all, a couple points of setup. So we believe that debate academies, they're usually seen as extracurricular debate coaching, and they're also seen as like tutoring programs we believe that these institutions in this case are usually recognized schools or universities, and these institution-based tournaments right now, they only accept registered schools and universities and not extracurricular debate coaching such as these debate academies. So the main problem right now is that people who are passionate about debate, they do not have access to these institution-based tournaments and therefore that allows them to not be able to improve or fulfill their actual potential, and this does not give them the correct experience or credits that they will need to go in the future and actually achieve their full potential and achieve teams that they actually want to get into, for example, the Hong Kong team and stuff like that. In order for us to win this debate, we only have to really prove one thing, that we are, on our side, we are actually able to benefit the individual debater the most, for example, give them more opportunities. So today I'll be providing you with two substantives. First of all, how we are able to benefit the individual more, and secondly, about why only on our side we're actually able to benefit these individuals. Okay, so 3 simple layers under how we're able to benefit the individual. So first of all, we believe that there are 2 scenarios in this debate. If the school doesn't provide these opportunities, for example, they do not have their own debate teams to actually go to these competitions. So in this scenario, we believe that many schools in the status quo, they do not recognize or take debate seriously. They would rather go do some other sport, for example, like football, hockey, stuff like that. And there often isn't even a debate team or training or even enough funding to go and establish this debate team or training. So therefore, the schools do not sign up and they do not have the capabilities to sign up for these tournaments, right? And this is this is better on our side because we believe that on our side, these debate academies, they do have enough funds. You as the parent and as the child are the people that are actually paying these debate academies. So therefore, the debate academies have the duty and they must actually enroll you into these competitions, right? We believe believe that the debaters are now given an opportunity to go with their academy instead of with their school or institution, providing them with a platform to still be able to reach their full potential and go into these competitions, and as it is not locked behind a gate just for schools that have enough funds, have enough time, and have enough money to go to this, right? There are two possible outcomes. First of all, the school tries to work hard to keep their star debaters and therefore establish a debate team, so the people that are actually passionate about debate and are actually good at debate have a platform where they can go to these debate competitions via their school. Or secondly, even if the school does not change and does not put extra funds, extra money into this debate opportunity, these outside academies actually are able to attend these tournaments without their school and gain the experience that they need to unlock their potential. And go to future debate competitions, right? Secondly, on the second layer, even if the school does provide these opportunities, we believe that the school's incentives are to win the competition and tournaments as a school instead of debaters' personal growth, right? They'll focus on the strongest few debaters. So if you go into the debate team and you're not the strongest few debaters, you will likely never be able to climb to the top or have any growth in which you will soon enough be the strongest few debaters. They will only train the strongest few debaters and pull all their resources to these debaters to send them to tournaments. They'll always send the best few debaters, which will stifle the growth and opportunities for slightly weaker or younger debaters who need the experience to grow and to actually get better at debating. On a comparative, our institutions prioritize the growth and gaining of experience for their students as debaters. Each student and each parent are giving a large sum of money to these debate academies in order for them to train and teach their own child to actually get better and better at debate, right? This is an incentive, a profit incentive for them to actually go and continue to do this because they want to keep these debaters in their tuition academy and therefore keep the profit stream and stuff like that. So therefore they do have an incentive to actually send these people to competitions and give these debaters the experience and opportunities that they need. Is there a POI?
Yeah, you can go to debate competitions and be passionate about debate without necessarily institutionalized debate within these competitions. Given that, why is your analysis mutually exclusive?
Because okay, I'm gonna get to that later, but just to reply to your question right now, we believe that because these competitions are unique, which I'll further explain in my second argument. Okay, on the third layer of this argument about how we're able to benefit the individual more, we believe that now we allow institutions to actually come into these debate competitions. There's higher competition as there are more people attending, right? This is pretty okay, and we believe that these people will now face a wider amount of debaters, and there are more styles. Therefore, they're able to improve more on themselves. So, for example, a school that's always been dominating debate competitions, they might not work as hard as they know that they're the best at debate in that competition, right? But now that you're mixing in people from other debate academies and these tuition centers, right? They will now have more competition and more people that they actually need to face. So therefore, this will lead them to work harder and harder. So okay, so now on to my second argument on how there are unique benefits to these tournaments. So two layers on this. First of all, we believe that these debate competitions are more recognized. For example, JSDC, WDC, they are overall more recognized. These institution-based tournaments are seen as more prestigious in the eye of the public, and on your CV is seen as more prestigious for national teams too, right? These tournaments are often regional tournaments. For example, JSDC is in Hong Kong, stuff like that. And there are often regional tournaments that are usually annual thing, and they're usually the biggest event for these debaters of that age. They're a really big deal. For example, if you would like to get to the Hong Kong team in the future, you would have to go through JSDC and stuff like that. These yearly inter-school tournaments are usually for middle and high school, and they're usually the biggest deal for these debaters of these age. This means that the achievements within these tournaments are more recognized, more impressive compared to tournaments that are that are not annual or that are not seen as prestigious. And we believe that there other tournaments are less well known and less recognized on the large scale. This is often because people believe that the really good debaters aren't there. For example, the debaters that debate at a really high level with their school, they usually believe that they aren't there, so your achievements are worth less. Lastly, we believe that the participation in these tournaments are really necessary for young debaters. All important competitions start when you are a really young age. If you miss these opportunities, you do not have the opportunity to keep going and actually climb to the top. Middle and high school tournaments are very, very necessary, not only for the experience, but for the name that you have went into these tournaments and gained the experience that you have been there. You need these qualifications or credits to get into national teams, university teams, or whatever high team that you want to go into in the future. These tournaments are the ones in your ranking in which your ranking and achievements are recognized by scouts for your talent or from national teams, which means that once you do not participate in this, your chance at getting at a higher team is forever close to you. So in conclusion, what have I told you? I've told you first of all about how we're able to benefit the individual debater better. Secondly, I've also proven to you why these competitions are the most beneficial and they're unique. So in order for debaters to fulfill their potential, you must vote for Prop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for that speech. I invite Leader of Opposition here.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. Personal pronouns will be he, him. I'll take POIs verbally. Opposition has already lost this debate because they can see that the debate academies are elitist when they say that all of these people need to pay lots of money to go to these debate academies to learn all of this knowledge, to be able to hope that they're able to join the national team. That is what they say on proposition. But before moving on to rebuttals and my two arguments, I'd like to give a general framing of what we on opposition support as a whole. What do we define as institutions? I think this is really simple. It's just that schools, universities, and colleges that operate under the identity of being a part of an institution, and there's probably going to be a lot of other sectors and branches that are part of the school. I think the secondly, that means that the debate academies, which is to say that the extracurricular institution that focuses a lot on debate, right? What we say in the status quo, then it looks like where debate academies are not recognized as institution in institution-based tournaments, and we're not allowed to, for example, let those two actors be able to compete in the same tournaments. Fundamentally, we say that the point of institution-based tournaments is different from other debate tournaments. Their point is being like the point is unity, building bonds, and competition between different schools in the same league, and which is like the same logic with like school sports teams and leagues and competition as a whole. Moving on to my rebuttals then, coming from Prime Minister. Their argument talks about how you're able to benefit the individual because when schools don't provide the opportunities, then you're able to, for example, go to these academies and try and learn a lot more about debate and hopefully get into the national team. There's a few problems of this, right? First, which was to say that all these academies are profit-oriented and private companies, which is to say that they probably want a lot of people to join, and the fees to, for example, be able to join and enroll in the very first place are probably going to be a lot of money, and a lot of people are probably going to be inaccessible to all of these opportunities coming from these academies. But the second thing I want to say that going to these academies doesn't guarantee you the spot that you're able to get into a national team. For example, that if you don't have like the necessarily like determination or the skill, even if you like enroll in this academy, I don't think that is really, for example, able for you to get to the national team as a whole. But the last thing I want to note here, which is kind of confusing, is as to why proposition even gave their speech in the entire first place, is because this debate isn't about like whether or not academies are good or not. We say that we still have academies that exist on our side of the house, and competition between academies still exists on our side of the house. It's just that on our side of the house, competitions between academies and institutions do not exist. We think on our side of the house, that is the only reason why institutions should not debate with all these academies, is because of the amount of disparity in money that exists within our side of the house and within the status quo in the very first place. First argument then on why debate academies are elitist in the very first place then. I think this premise is very simple. One is that debate academies are like 90% of the time profit oriented and aiming to, for example, to make a lot of money. But secondly, I'd say that it's super expensive to learn as a whole, and it probably costs like thousands of dollars to even learn debate as a whole. What does this mean then? It means that debate academies, for example, will get more elitist and less accessible to the average individual when they exist on the comparative to other institutions. We say that institutions have to focus a lot on other things other than debate on a larger scale, i.e. like research projects and other things, right? where institutions have to spend money on those things like fees for like all the teachers, for example, science equipment, research projects, and other things you don't necessarily need to run a school. The only thing you need to invest in for debate academy is debate. Nothing else is needed to be invested in on this, or we say on both sides of the house. Debate academies are able to, for example, hire world champions to come to their institutions because make their institutions more prestigious because they have the money and capacity to do so. We say that what that means is that there's going to be a more disparity in terms of inequality because more people are being inaccessible to enter, for example, the debating world where they're able to be introduced to debating in the very first place. But the second layer I want to note here is that schools are usually for a wider range of people, just to say that the average individual are more accessible on our side of the house. We say that means that there's more accessibility, but also the reason why we learn debate in the very first place is to encourage people to learn about debating in the very first place and how to argue and craft the perfect speech. We in opposition are willing to take the trade-off here, which is to say that even if there is less quality of debate in the very first place, we still say there's more accessibility on our side of the house because the entire point of debating is to learn about debating in the very first place. And we say that more learning on the comparative for all, when all the schools are able to have and develop a better, for example, school program for debating, it's not that just the people that can it's not just debate is not going to be just for the people that can, for example, go to these debate academies and afford to go. We said it's going to be average. It's going to be accessible to the average individual in the entire world that are able to learn about debate, for example. What's the impact here then? I think this is really simple. Just say that we have more opportunities for less privileged group of people because there's more equal and accessible platforms for them to access and learn from it in the very status quo. Before second argument, any POIs? 3, 2, 1. Seeing none then. Second argument then on discouragement of school clubs development. I think the premise here is twofold. One, that it undermines the school programs because the credibility of debate academies outweigh the ones coming from the institutions. But secondly, I think it's unable to compete on proposition because of the disparity of resources, because schools have much less resources compared to like the private debate academies that exist. So when you have the institutions and academies competing together in the same bracket, we think that discourages the school clubs as a whole. What do I mean by this? I think this is really simple, which is to say that the schools are unable to compete against the academies if that was actually the case. On their side of the house on prop, as the academies are able to compete and win the major competitions like WUDC in their world, that means that more people will be attracted to those debate academies as a whole. That means that more people are wanting to join for the prestige that the academy is like really, really good and it has won like major tournaments all over the world. But people, for example, stop going to these school programs because they think that look at the school program, they're really, really bad and there's no funding coming into the debate program, and people just stop wanting to go to these debate programs as a whole. That means that they don't want to go because it's low quality debate education. So that means the long-term scale on their sort of house, that means that less and less people debate in the long term for like the average schools and the average individual that exists within these schools. This also means two other things. One, that the average kid that wants to debate but cannot, for example, afford to go to the debate academy means that they're more and more inaccessible. It makes it more elitist and to like the general debating scope. But secondly, I'll just say that less and less people engage with debate because if you're unable to afford, for example, all of like the fees that you have to do, you have to get from all of these debating institutions, I say that is a very unlikely, for example, for you to be able to engage with debate as a very whole. I'll take that point.
What type of schools do you believe will have a debate team and actually go to these competitions?
I'm not sure what you mean by that POI, because I think that when you're able to, for example, have institutions competing against each other, that is when it is actually a fair competition. Because I think that on your side of the house, I still think it's really a weird why you're arguing your side of the house. Because your entire on your side of the house, the entire PM speech was about how academies are good. But even if we concede that academies are good, we say that it creates a more disparity when you allow those academies to actively compete in the bracket of institutions. We say that is inherently bad because the debate academies are inherently elitist. Even if we concede to your entire speech that the academies are good and academies will let these people enter these national levels, we say that competing against institutions where these institutions don't have enough money from government funding to be able to build their national debate team, we say that discourages more people on your side of the house when people are unable to compete. Final impact then on the second argument, why do school clubs provide a better what do school clubs provide that debate institutions can? We say there are things like, for example, advertisements, and because you're closer proximity, we say that you're more likely to go into your school clubs as a whole. But secondly, I would say that it's like exposure, right? Because you're closer to them, but also like a bandwagon effect because you see all your friends and classmates joining these debate clubs as a whole. We say that also means that when you're able to, for example, have the interest in accessing debate in the very first place, which we have because we have like the general accessibility to the average individual, we say that it's more likely to discover their interest as a whole. And for these reasons, very proud to be on OP.
Thank you very much, first up, for that speech. I invite Team PMJ here.
My pronouns are she, her, and I'd like to take my POIs in the chat, please. Sorry for that. The opposition first speaker took on the burden of proving that they have more harm than good by allowing debate academies to join institution-based competitions. In doing so, they claim that their main burden is to prove that they don't mind debate academies, they just mind debate academies competing in the same bracket as institutions. Therefore, I'm going to prove to you why our key stakeholder, individuals who aren't given opportunities, are in our world given opportunities, and there's overall more fairness, more accessibility, and more fulfillment of potential in the world. So first, what are the main issues with side opposition's case? Well, firstly, their key stakeholder are less wealthy people who are somehow in schools that have very prestigious debate teams, that have proper debate training and proper debate clubs that train often and send them to very prestigious competitions, and yet cannot afford to go to, for example, debate academies. Now, what is wrong with this key stakeholder? Well, firstly, it doesn't exist. We have told you that the schools in the status quo, they're able to provide things like very often and frequent debate training. They're able to provide sending their students to debate tournaments all the time and have, to an extent, fame and popularity in the debate world, are likely to be very expensive private schools that have a history of sending their students to tournaments that aren't oftentimes seen as so important or worthy. We believe that this key stakeholder they were talking about is, for example, a less wealthy child. However, we believe that if they're really less wealthy, even if we can see that they are less likely to be, for example, in a debate academy, we believe that they are going to be in the kind of schools that we describe in our first speaker. Schools that either simply do not care about debate as much, either because they don't have the funding to put into it, they'd rather invest in things like sports and things like more academic involvement for things like research projects or for things like robotics competitions than invest in debate, which they see as worthless, or they simply do not care enough. There's no one in that school that is pushing it. There's no culture of debate in that school. We believe that even if these schools did send children to competitions, they will not have things like frequent training that allow for children to even be interested in debate in the first place. We believe that they will advertise debate not at all, even if they have it. Their programs will be, for example, one training session and then a competition. We believe that this is firstly not attractive to students at all, meaning that they are less likely to even join in the first place, and secondly, even if they do join, we believe that this is not an environment in which they're able to flourish at all. They're only sent to competitions to have their ego completely destroyed and feel like they have no self-worth and give a debate instantly. We believe that it's not fair for side opposition to assume that there is such a key stakeholder of a less wealthy child in a public school that can't afford much, however, also has perfect debate education within that school. Even though they concede a trade-off of the quality of debate compared to, for example, other more important things like fairness, we believe that you don't have either in your world. Why? Because in your world, these children never pick up debate in the first place, or if they do, they drop it almost instantly because they're not given an environment where they're able to improve, where they're able to even develop a like or a love for debate. We believe it's unfair for side opposition to try and rule out any type of child who might have access to debate. No, thank you. Only for a key stakeholder who simply does not exist. Now, again, we've told you that these schools you're talking about, schools that debate seriously well are elitist, which you seem to have a big problem with. We believe that in the status quo, the teams that come out on top and have students that are trained by the best are not only private, likely international schools that cost a lot of money and contain many rich kids, but are also full of students who likely train in debate academies as well. We believe it's not fair for me to say that schools are able to train a bunch of debaters from the ground up. We believe that when debate academies enroll in these competitions, it's not going to be a huge flock of new debaters. Rather, it's going to be many of the same debaters and more debaters who weren't given the opportunity in your world, either because their school didn't care enough about it or because there was a huge school hierarchy. For example, in schools that are the best at debate, we believe that they care about their school pride and winning and keeping their championship title over all else. They won't care about providing more chances, for example, for children who have just started debate, or for children who, for example, take an interest in it but aren't so good yet or don't have the experience. We believe that debate academies will do this. They will send children who aren't necessarily the best or who don't necessarily train 5 times a week. They'll give them the experience they need to both develop a love in debate and hopefully go further in the world. Now, one thing your first speaker said was that there's no guarantee that children will make the national team on either world. However, the difference is that on our side, we're able to give them the opportunity and the chance to go further, even if not to get that far. So simply develop a love for debate and receive all the benefits that debate brings to you. For example, critical thinking in the real world, or just a passion for a hobby, anything. We believe that we are able to provide that while you are not able to. Therefore, we believe that you have failed your burden of proving that there's more harm than good of people being allowed into these tournaments. Furthermore, you talk about how on your side, schools are more accessible. More children join schools. They are more accessible, blah, blah, blah. And how they're just simply more open to other types of children. However, we believe that by allowing debate academies into these tournaments, we are not in any way lowering the accessibility of your schools. We are not kicking them out of tournaments. We are simply allowing other academies to join as well. And if it is true that these academies are so much better, we believe it will not only motivate these children to maybe think about taking debate one step further, spending a bit more time on it, but it will also mean that these children are encouraged to, for example, work harder, to put more time into debate. We believe that the kind of harms you describe simply do not exist. We believe that even if more debate academies are involved and they do come out, for example, on top or in the top few places, it only encourages schools to, as we said earlier, try and take debate more seriously, to try and retain their best debaters, or even just put more energy into debate, put more money into, for example, debate clubs, debate ECAs, anything that will allow their children a chance to actually gain access to the debating world and a chance to actually thrive and love debate. So in conclusion, we believe that the side opposition has not at all proved their burden of more harm than good, and the kind of negatives and harms they describe about having academies and institutions in the same bracket, for example, unfairness, are at best minuscule and at worst non-existent and outweighed by our arguments. Now, before I move on to my extension, let me bring back some things that my earlier speaker said. I told you that these tournaments are likely to be more recognized, whether internationally or regionally, for national teams or for in the long run, even if it's for college CBs. We believe that as compared to, for example, tournaments that come and go. For example, this tournament, while it's really big and has many good debaters, it comes and goes. And even if you, for example, rank really high, people won't recognize it as you being an extremely talented debater. They might simply see it as, well, some of the best debaters weren't even there. Whereas they see, for example, inter-school tournaments, institution-based tournaments, as having all the best debaters centered in one place, meaning that these tournaments are, in their eyes, worth more and a better gauge of how important or how good you are at debate. But you believe?
Do I?
No, thank you. These are the kind of opportunities that it's not fair of you to deny to anyone, and that are unique to these kind of institution-based tournaments that cannot be accessed to tournaments that debate academies in the status quo are able to access. Now, moving on to my extension, we believe that we are able to further promote debate culture by allowing these academies into institution-based tournaments. Now, why is this? We believe that many people might think that debate academies are, for example, useless, money-driven, or simply not worth the time at all, extracurricular-wise, and don't actually help the growth of the student. However, we believe that by allowing them into these competitions and allowing them to join, it gives them more chance for students and these debate students to actually succeed and gain recognition. We believe that while this improves people's views on academics, it also means that it increases the overall participation. For example, when more and more students join these institutions and, for example, show that they develop a debate and want to take it one step further, we believe that there'll be more people willing to join. You describe an effect in your world where people join because they see their friends joining. We believe the same thing can happen with institutions. However, institutions have, for example, more resources, more opportunities, and are therefore more unique and more special than school clubs that oftentimes don't even exist. Furthermore, we believe that parents are more likely to send their children to, for example, academies if they see it as, for example, worthwhile or a way for their children to actually get into major competitions that they see it as important or worth the time. We believe that by allowing these academies into these institutions, there are more children who will end up joining debate teams, loving debate, and being put in an environment where they're able to flourish. For all these reasons, I'm so proud to propose.
Thanks, DPM. Shall I invite DLO here?
Hi, am I clearly audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you so much. Prefer to pronounce she, her, and I'll take chat POIs and chat POIs strictly, please, so don't unmute in the middle of my speech. My time starts in 3, 2, 1. I think the primary reason why government already falls out of today's debate is because they mischaracterize what the purpose of debate is. Sure, it's a good extracurricular, and sure, it's a good hobby, and it can help students develop critical skills, such as being able to think more critically and being able to have a more logical flow of thought. But we tell you the primary purpose of debate isn't to compete, it isn't to be the absolute best, it isn't to just add something more to your resume. Moreover, it's about developing a passion for a hobby and also just about improving in skills in general. And we believe on this side of the house, when competitions are the only emphasis, both in schools and in debating academies, they take away from the actual purpose of debate and therefore actually the passion of a lot of students and debaters that are passionate about this topic in the first place. Very proud to oppose. Simple things as DL will be doing. Firstly, is simply engaging with some extraneous rebuttals. And second of all, basically analyzing the comparative and providing the extension by that. Firstly, I think there's one rebuttal that I'd like to offer, and I think this will come in the form of a clash, which is that which side benefits the development of debaters more. And I think there's three primary layers that I'm going to offer as to why we win this mini clash at second. Firstly, I think schools do offer good opportunities, and the spec is twofold. Firstly, we tell you that schools are incentivized to offer these good opportunities simply because schools want to actively develop their extracurriculars in order to enhance their students' resumes and therefore make themselves seem better because it seems like their students have more on their plates and simply are more well-rounded and have more things like hobbies that they can develop. But moreover, note that they do not engage with this, which is that schools are a lot more accessible. Even if it isn't necessarily the best environment, at least a lot of students are able to access it because when you put a club in school, it's likely free or at least not super costly and super elitist, unlike debate institutions that often ask for a lot of fees and take and only the middle or upper class can participate in. But secondly, note that we still have competitions between academies, such as non-institutional competitions that individual debaters and debate academies can still enter. So I still think that we're able to co-opt their benefits to some extent. And moreover, I don't think they really engage with the idea what their analysis was by mutually exclusive. But sure, let's take the trade-off. Let's say that while institutionalized competitions are a lot better than non-institutionalized competitions, I still think it's a lot better on our side of the house for two reasons. Firstly, the only reason as they give you why institutionalized competitions are so much better is simply because, well, they're seen as better and you're able to get into the national team with that. Firstly, I like to point out that it's a slippery slope and they don't really mech that out. But moreover, even if I assume all the mechanisms just randomly fall into place, we still tell you that having debaters look better isn't the primary purpose of debate. We tell you it's still on and I quote from their own DPM, it's still about developing these critical skills. And I feel like you're still able to do that in any competition regardless. Therefore, regardless if a competition is more prestigious or less prestigious, you're still able to get the skills learned on either side. But lastly, I want to call out something before I move on to the extensions and other comparisons, which is that debate academies still exist on our side of the house. You're still allowed to go into these academies, but you just don't compete between academies and institutions because academies are always able to beat the institutions because of the extra funding and extra coaching they're able to offer these students. We tell you that by this, you discourage them from debating in the first place. And however, on our side of the house, we still encourage it because in their different brackets. Then, before I move on to my extension, which will directly clash with the deputy's extension on this side, are there any POAs? 3, 2, 1. Seeing as none, I'll be moving on to the extension then, which is that it undermines the entire purpose of debate. The premise is, why do people learn debate? And I think this premise is threefold. Firstly, people learn debate to improve their own oral skills and to become more confident. But moreover, they want to explore this as a hobby and they want to have fun while debating. But lastly, they want to be able to do something useful with debate one day, which is to say that they want to have like a powerful voice and be able to speak on topics that you're passionate about now that you have like debate skills that you can utilize in this process. We tell you that this characterization primarily makes two things. Firstly, we tell you the debate academies are quite heavily learning oriented because most of the people that go into it have that as a primary goal. Debate academies have the active incentive to kind of merge into what their customers' pleas are because they want to make themselves seem better and they want to gain more profit out of that. But more secondly, we tell you that the debate itself does have a competitive aspect. We tell you the debate doesn't operate with competitions as the primary purpose. And we tell you this is a derivative of the first spec because the debate academies operate off of what debate looks like itself then. Then we tell you that institutionalized debate in competitions looks like two things. Firstly, we already characterized that this looks like a change in curriculum. We tell you this likely looks like more focus on techniques that are specific to competitions and that can help students do well. We tell you that often comes at the expense of pushing students to learn things that may not necessarily suit their level. For example, if a debate institution were to want to do well and want to get institutionalized and recognized in institutional competitions, we tell you they may be pushing their beginner students to learn things that are quite out of their level. But second of all, this looks like the emphasis and in fact glorification on competing in high-level competitions and viewing that as a top priority rather than teaching. And we tell you this goes for all of these stakeholders, ranging from parents, students, and coaches within these institutions. We tell you this is true because of the characterization that James gave you about debate academies and how they're elitist and profit-oriented simply because they're private organizations and have the incentive to appeal to the people and get them to join the academy. We tell you the best way for them to do that is trying to highlight their own achievements, which will look like them actively sending the best debaters to the most prestigious competitions and training these debaters day by day to get awards. We tell you this is so bad under two reasons. Firstly, we tell you that it takes away from the learning. We tell you that improving on debate and learning things like more techniques and how to become a good debater and what the basics of debate are is no longer the priority. Instead, competitions are, and students are simply tirelessly trained to compete simply because debate academies are institutionalized and now have more of an incentive to actively push students further ahead. But secondly, it pushes the debater to learn things that are out of their comfort zone. And by this, I don't mean just challenges. I mean forcing growth and making that come at the cost of them not being able to feel comfortable and what and how they're learning. But lastly, I think there's a couple of impacts that are coming. We tell you that firstly, the purpose of debate itself changes. It no longer becomes a hobby and a learning opportunity, but an elitist sport. But secondly, we tell you that people are uncomfortable with learning debate and may perhaps lose this passion for it because it's no longer actual debate that they're learning on their side of the house. We tell you it's simply dry competition. Then, Judge, I'd like to take the last few minutes to respond to the comparative on their side of the house, and I feel like we're able to overweight them on all levels. Firstly, using extension to prove, I think they mischaracterize from the very get-go. They misillustrate what the purpose of debate actually looks like, what this form of learning and development that people that are passionate from debate actually want, which is to say, it's just learn. It's not necessarily to be the best, because obviously that is optimal, but it is to simply have more fun and maybe improve your skills in the process. But secondly, I think we're still able to overweight them because we're able to co-opt the vast majority of their benefits, such as for example, still getting people to improve on our side of the house. But lastly, we're able to prove two exclusive benefits. Firstly, on how we have schools providing more opportunities, and how on our side of the house, without the institutionalized of debate academies within these competitions, we incentivize schools to provide more opportunities. And second, how we made debate more accessible on a large scale and simply increase the magnitude of all of our impacts in general. For these reasons, we're so proud to oppose this topic ballot. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader of Opposition. Shall I invite the member of government here?
Hi, can I confirm that I'm visible and audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. My name is Lois Vanetz. I'm the third speaker, and I take pronouns she, her, and my PY is in chat, please. My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Opposition has been very tense in this debate for two reasons. Firstly, they keep on bringing up, they cannot find their characterization about whether they're talking about local schools or private schools. Because firstly, they're telling us that, oh, they're very underfunded and they cannot allocate enough funds to go to debate. Therefore, they won't be able to actually bridge this financial gap between these institutions and academies because they don't have enough funds to allocate to debate. But on the other hand, they give you very unrealistic analysis about how they're able to give so much opportunities to these debaters because they're able to give you really good training and also help them with personal growth. The thing is, you can't have both at the same time. This is very unrealistic, and this is something which does not exist. The world they're talking about does not exist. You cannot have both at the same time, so they cannot have either. But I'm going to be explaining to you later on in my case why in either of these scenarios, whether they're talking about or not, I'm going to claim that they're completely wrong and we take this debate. So the main clash I believe existing is whether or not who benefits the individual debaters better, and also
also who's able to give them more personal growth, more opportunities, etc. So firstly, why are institutions and schools unable to do this? So firstly, we told you that they have limited opportunities. So firstly, a lot of these schools, let's say they are quite underfunded, they do not provide a school debate team, or often there is some sort of hierarchy in these schools if they do have a debate team. Usually there's only a selected handful of students who will be labeled as the star debaters, and schools will only push up these selected few, and they don't really look at the rest, or they just ignore them and do not actually provide them with equivalent training. Note that this means that even with a school team, only a few students are the ones who are actually favored, are the ones who get sent to these tournaments, and these are the only ones who are prioritized. And this also means that these people are likely to be those who are older or been in debate for a longer time. And O1 tells you that there's also going to be a lot of inequality because it's like very elitist and it's very like highly based off your financial means. But we believe that when you have institutions alone, you often get even more inequality. A lot of reasons for this. Firstly, they told us that like it's very unfair because of like different financial like gaps. If we buy this claim, it's not going to change on your side either way. You still have financial hierarchies because in Second Speaker, we told you that because like if you're, for example, like lower class, you can't like afford to go to these academies anyways, it's very unlikely you're also going to be attending a school which provides, firstly, really good like debate teachings as well. So it's very unlikely you're going to have both at the same time. And also, debate is a very expensive hobby to have. It costs a lot of money. So schools who don't have sufficient funds anyway to provide for a lot of the teams are likely to not even exist or go to these like competitions anyways, because they won't actually like dedicate their funds to this. So it's very unlikely that what they're talking about is actually going to exist. And also, note that even if this still exists, there's still going to be differences between budgets for schools on either side, because even in school v. school debates, all of these schools might allocate different amounts of money to debate. They might care different amounts. Like some schools might just take it as like another ECA. Some might think, oh, like this is a really big thing and we have to like give a lot of money to this. And some schools are very competitive. They even do the same thing that academies will do. They will literally hire world-class coaches and pay so much money in order to make sure that their students are like recognized and that they get a good reputation, because as we said, these schools also have a really big incentive to make their school look good. They want to have a good reputation. So you still have this existing financial gap. It does not change on your side. This will still exist. And the issue that they're mainly trying to talk about is still going to happen no matter what. And they're also, notice how they're only living in their best case scenario, where, for example, like these students, they don't have as much money. They haven't talked about like more like middle class students or other types of students. They only focus on this one stakeholder, which we explained to you why it's very unlikely for this to even exist on their side. And these people, they already at the time, as we brought to you in our first argument, how there's likely to be a lot of hierarchies between like the star students and then only the rest don't actually get acknowledged at all. These people who are the star debate students are very likely to be going to these academies anyway, because how they select this process is obviously based off of your skill level and how good you are at debate, as well as like other factors like how long you've like been doing it and stuff like that. So these are people who actually are likely to go to these academies anyways. Another reason for why this is still going to exist, because no matter what, you're still going to have students who go to these academies and they can also do their school team as well. And these students are the ones who, because they take extra training, they can also be in their school team too. These are likely to be students who also do like 5 days of debate training outside of school, but then that's why they get into their school team, and that's why they're the only ones who are pushed up by their school. And all the other new students who perhaps they just like are interested in debate and they want to try out for the first time, they don't get acknowledged because they're seen as not good enough, or they join too late, so no one actually tries to like introduce them. And also note that they're very, very tense on their characterization, as I pointed out. So are these schools actually underfunded or wealthy? So on both of these metrics, I'm going to be clear to you why we win on both scenarios. So first, take their idea that these are wealthy schools. So their characterization completely clashes with all of their first speaker's speech, because if these schools are wealthy, then it means that they can completely match the funds that are given for debate institutions as well, because that means they're willing to dedicate so much money. So it's very likely that if you actually want to give so much student opportunity and focus on individual students and help them like do all these great things, these are going to be wealthy schools. But that completely clashes with your second speaker, if your first and second speaker, and also your entire case and everything they mentioned to us about how there's a financial difference. And also, if it's going to be not like wealthy schools or more like underfunded, or they prioritize debate less, what this means is that it's very unrealistic that you can assume that firstly they're going to have a debate team, as it's very costly, or they just don't allocate any funds to the debate team at all, which means you don't get any any of the personal growth or development of these students in debate. They literally told us that their main goal is to try to get students to be engaged more with debate and to help them learn and develop as a speaker. How can you do that when you only prioritize the same like 3 people? You only send them to tournaments. You don't actually give them any real training aside from maybe just like giving them like emotion that a lot of these people just don't actually end up taking seriously because they don't know how to do it, because you don't try to teach them, because you only focus on the selected handful of students. And we told you in all of our speakers how we actually are the only ones who actually give opportunities. We make them more visible. We actually give them more representation. And because of this, for example, as we brought up to you, a lot of these schools only pick a certain few people, and they neglect everyone else. But when you go to an institution, obviously there's a lot of variety, and they also will take in other people. And institutions don't do this. And then what academies actually do is that they actually look at personal growth. They actually try to help you as a speaker. Schools do not have this incentive because schools don't actually look at how you're doing as a speaker by yourself. They do not care about how you are doing. They don't care about like whether you're improving or like how you're like doing with your debate or like where your flaws are. They do not care about any of those factors. The only thing they want is the trophies. They want you to win the debates, and that's all they care about, which is why they're very unlikely to actually try to help students develop themselves individually, which is why we think that you do not give students more opportunities. You do not do any of this. And they say that like a lot of these students also, like they might like, even if you go to like an academy, like you're not going to get like, you're not going to be guaranteed into getting to the Hong Kong team. Okay, whatever. Even if you don't get into a Hong Kong team, at least we give them more exposure. You don't even send them to a tournament. You just make them sit in a room and then look at a piece of paper with maybe like one argument written on it for like 30 minutes. You don't actually teach them how to do anything. At least we actually teach them. We give them opportunities, we help them grow, and we give them a chance. You guys don't even give them a chance. You just make them like be against a bunch of other people who are much more experienced, and you don't actually try to help them grow as like on their own. So we think this entire thing about how like it's not 100% guaranteed that you wouldn't get into the national team. At least we have some guarantee, which is more likely than whatever your guarantee is. We actually just neglect anyone who joined too late for you, which is why we completely think that we take this debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member of GAF, for that speech. Member of POP, shall we have it?
Both really visible.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Okay, judges ready, opponents ready. Time starts in 3, 2, 1. Opposition doesn't seem to recognize that we reach at least a net benefit of more accessibility from the resources provided in a school. And so in this debate, I'll do a few things. Firstly, I'll give a few clarifications as to some points of conflict that we've discussed on both sides. Then I'll move on to give a few rebuttal and rebuilding and explain clashes and essentially a world comparison. Firstly, then a few clarifications. How would we actually characterize these debate tournaments? I think this has been said very clear, which is that institution-based tournaments at the end of the day at least gives interest to students, because at the end of the day, schools have more money compared to students. Even schools with less funds can at least create a little more interest, having peer advisors, teachers who are actually interested in these debate. And again, for the millionth time, debate academies still exist on our side. You're still allowed to go to these debates, right? You just don't compete between academies and institutions because there's a different bracket, which we've also explained how there's a difference in culture. It doesn't mean that you have no opportunities, whatever, on our side of the debate, even in our worst case. You discourage them from debating in the first place. We still encourage it because they're in completely different brackets. And lastly, they say that we contradict, basically, but opportunities don't depend on funds in institution-based competitions because competitions themselves in institutions are opportunities later. Now moving on to a few summarizing as to what we've talked about in today's debate. Firstly, their side. They've given 3 main arguments. Firstly, the benefits of individuals who can't access school resources more. However, this still reaches a net benefit on our side because at least in our side of the debate, there's still schools who at least give some debate resources. Secondly, why are these debate competitions non-unique, which is the second point later. there are still many prestigious competitions that are not institutionalized. There are many competitions that you can use. And they've even talked about how the main purpose of debate is to learn from these opportunities instead of competition, which was the thing that they basically characterized as the most important thing. And even if that doesn't stand, there's still many prestigious competitions that are not institutionalized. For example, CETO and a lot of other WSDC competitions, right? The third point about debate culture is going to be directly refuted by our third debate about ruining culture of institution-based tournaments, because there are two different types of culture that probably talk about two different things. But now moving on to what our arguments have been done. Our first argument was about debate academies are elitist. It is because they require the premises of money, time, effort, etc. And now we'll mechanize this even more, even though we have already clashes. Our second argument about undermining school opportunities, this means combining debate academies into institution-based tournaments, means that school clubs will be developed less, making them less accessible compared to how they are now, meaning a net worse, like a net bad effect for them. And lastly, our argument about ruining culture of institution-based tournaments will be further mechanized in my clash. Go ahead.
Considering that you don't care about competition, you rather care about things like passion and opportunity, isn't it a fact that we were able to provide a bit more opportunity than your side?
I would like to explain that exactly why you don't prove that in my clashes. In my first clash, which is which side provides more access to the average individual interested in debate. The premise is that institutions are obviously less elitist. I think we agree with that compared to debate academies, because at least they are more invested in less things. This can be mechanized in a wide range of ways because they cost more than school clubs, because they're more incentivized to win than school clubs, because academies are literally based on debate. That's where their profit comes from. That's how they make their parents happy and their students happy. If they lose everything. But a school cares less about whether it is not a win or not. It is just like sports in a school league. It is more about how much sportsmanship you get, how much competition, how much better do you actually get through this thing, right? And so basically, because school institutions are less elitist, there's more engagement in the event for the average individual who does not have access to elitist debate academies. To characterize these students, they can be students in public schools who have clubs that at least gain some interest, in our worst case, in this topic. And secondly, people who have better training are able to help other students, because schools will obviously not be like, I will push these out. This is very bad for their image in the first place, right? So if we win this clash, I believe what is likely to happen is that these schools are probably going to push multiple teams out, because that is something that they can do in order so that it doesn't achieve to a net harm on their side. It means that they're probably still going to give more opportunities for all students who are actually engaged in this debate, because schools in the status quo care about equality, or else they're doomed, basically. And if we win this clash, we win this debate, because we prove that we, in our worst case scenario, at least get students to engage more in debate, because schools are less elitist, meaning that debate clubs are still going to propagate propagate these debate opportunities. So even if schools push for the better debaters, the less better debaters are still going to push opportunities, because the school, as we've mechanized, the school does have an incentive to push everyone who is interested in a certain thing. Now moving on to our second clash, which is whether or not institution-based competitions are more recognized. Our premise is that there are many institutionalized competitions that are there are many prestigious competitions that are non-unique, that are not institutionalized, whether or not people attend institution-based competitions, because there are other competitions as well, such as CETO and many WSDC's competitions, as I've talked about before, that have been proved to be prestigious. We see so many amazing debaters going to these competitions, so I don't understand how proposition can say that all the tournaments that are recognized for being good come from institutions, right? And this clash is important, because if we win this clash, we automatically win this debate. We prove that institution-based tournaments are non-unique, and we achieve a net benefit of, at least as I proved in my first clash, more resources for students in schools, as we've characterized. Now moving on to the third clash about the culture, the differences in culture of debate within institution-based tournaments. We basically tell you that the incentive for schools to attend institution-based tournaments is probably not necessarily competition. And in fact, the debate clubs to a net scale, in fact, have more incentive to do this, because they care about the profit, they care about how happy the parents are, and they probably have people who just really care about their scores. I think the schools have less to do with this because because this isn't the only sector that they need to get good scores in. This is not the only sector that they say, well, I must put all my effort into this because this is something that will give me like the net benefit that will help me for the rest of my school career. This is not true. What we tell you is that the culture of debate within institutionalized based in tournaments is more likely to look like different schools competing against each other, or schools who have debate clubs talking with each other, debating with each other to improve themselves. And what this means is that this is probably within the premise of sportsmanship. This is probably with the premise of both sides being happy about whether or not it is a win or loss, or at least somehow learning from this opportunity much more than debate academies, because debate academies innately care more about the win or loss. And so even in our worst case scenario, the comparative is that we receive a net benefit of firstly, that institutions won't become even worse. Institution-based tournaments won't become even worse when there is a difference or clash in culture, when debate academies sort of ruin the culture in institution-based tournaments. But secondly, that will receive a net benefit of more students getting engaged into debate. For all these reasons, opt out. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that speech. I now invite the up reply here.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. At the top of my speech, I really, really want to re-clarify this motion again, because I really don't think that proposition realizes what our case is. Because this debate motion isn't about whether or not debate academies are good compared to institutions, or how good debate academies are in competition against institutions and how the resources compare. This debate motion is about whether or not these two actors shall compete against each other in tournaments, which is to say that when we allow debate academies with so much resources to compete with public schools where they cannot match it, we say that this is just generally wrong, and we say that is bad. Because on our side of the house, we say that we still have debate academies. We still allow people to go to these debate academies. We still allow them to compete with their academy, with other people within their academy. But we just don't allow them to, for example, have debate academies competing against institutions, because that is to the point where there are far too many resources that the public schools cannot match. That is why we co-opt a lot of props analysis on the benefits of debate academies. But even if that's not the case, we told you why people are more encouraged to debate for the average person on our side of the house. Because debate clubs in public schools are really, really big, and the fact that there's equal resources for everyone in competitions against other institutions means that more people are aware about it, and people join as an introduction to debate, even if they drop debate in the future. But the last thing I want to say here is that we want to also clarify that debating isn't about the best or getting all of the awards or getting to like national teams, right? Given how government bases their argument off that, I think we could already mitigate that. But the second clarification here is that growth doesn't necessarily come in the form of being a star student and competing, right? Schools, for example, might even like send 3 students to the competitions in their best case. But even if that is the case, we still say that on our side of the house, they will still train every student to a certain extent. Did I drop?
Yes.
Oh, can I know what time you stopped me at?
But your time was even actually up. I was just about to stop.
I
But
stopped my clock
you
at
were
9.
Yeah, but you were you were making a comparative as to why the prop case. So when you were talking about let me check on it.
Oh, okay, okay. Uh,
Yeah, so you were just on the very last comparative when you
okay,
were showing why your word is comparatively better in terms of the extent of competition that exists. Yeah, something I underline.
okay, okay. I'll start my speech on 209 then. We say that even in our worst case scenario, that these schools only send 3 students to compete for the competitions, we still say that there's probably going to be, for example, an equal amount of resources for all other students in these things. But moreover, note that they never engage with the fact that debate academies still exist and they're non-institutional competitions. We use these mechanisms to also co-opt a lot of the benefits because there's still, for example, development and facilities and competitions to attend. And engaging with the financial difference thing, first, schools aren't that poor. I think that private schools still have like funds to a certain extent, and students from public schools have funds from the government. But even if that everything they say is true, at least there's still an incentive to exist in the very first place. And for example, having this debate club in the very first place is something that they have. But lastly, I just wanted to point out there's relatively no engagement with deputies extension about with deputies extension. Now, finally, on the comparisons then, right? What is proposition's best case then? You go to debate academies and then you get better and hopefully you get into a national team. But that also means that everyone else that can't afford debate academies will be ignored and they're perfectly fine with that because individuals are able to succeed. But we say that in our worst case, why we're still actively better than proposition's case, is because debate academies still exist. We call out all of their analysis on that. But also, we have more average individuals that are able to access debate in the very first place. That means there's a fair playing ground for everyone that starts off in these public schools or in these private schools or in any of these institutions, because schools have equal access to debate budgets and people can learn about debate even if they drop it in the future. And people can learn it from, for example, YouTube, where they're able to watch videos of world champions like David Africa, for example, where they're able to actively learn from those people. I think what that means is on our sort of house, we're actively able to, one, for example, to able to increase the spread of debate in the very first place. But two, we also say that we co-opt a lot of propositions benefits on whether or not we have debate academies and how people are able to improve in the very first place. And for these reasons, very proud to be an op.
All right, thank you very much. Reply, shall we have reply?
Okay, my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. There are a few big strategic mistakes that opposition clearly make, right? The 2 big ones that I will mostly talk about is how they live in their best case scenario. Their best case scenario also happens to be really tense. Their best case scenario is basically people go to rich private schools and that are the only people that we're talking about, right? But why do we win on this? We're still able to give other people opportunities. People that go to rich private schools are clearly able to afford these these debate academies and extra tutoring. We are just giving them an extra opportunity, extra ability to actually go to these to get extra training, right? We would just like to point out that all through their budget, they haven't really actually taken down our characterization of school. They even conceded in their first speaker that our characterization is correct, right? So their only response to this is how institutions are more elite or something. But we believe that it's more elite because you pay more money and you also pay for this, but you are also paying for clubs. So their whole best case scenario thing just kind of doesn't make sense at all, right? Okay. In addition to that, they're also very tense throughout their second. They talk about how they only care about passion or something, while their whole case is practically, oh, we should not allow this because competition and it is not fair for people, right? So opposition really needs to pick a side. Are they talking about passion or are they talking about competition? We clearly on proposition do not know what they actually stand for, and their stance is completely not clear. Okay, so let's talk about the 2 main clashes. First of all, who develops a better debater? What have we told you on this clash? We told you, first of all, how we encourage these debaters and how we give them more opportunities and more options to get into better teams in the future, right? Their only reply to this is how there's a financial difference, so therefore they won't win. or something. We told you over a third for like a minute and a half how this completely does not exist, which was completely not actually engaged in O3. In O3, what they talked about was how their culture will be kind of destroyed or something. That's first of all not rebuttal, and in addition to that, it is way too late to actually credit their culture point. So the judge, you should not credit their culture point, as that is a new point and not rebuttal at all. Okay, so back to what have they said on how they develop a better debater. They talk about how they create fair competition within like institutions at schools, which we believe is completely not true, right? We believe that even if you put institutions at schools together, we are still able to create a good competition. We believe that some schools may have more funding than others, and other schools may not have less funding. Are you not going to allow private schools to go against public schools? Because private schools clearly have more funding for these debate competitions. If that is what you stand for, then the opposition already fails at that premise, as we do already allow it, right? Okay, on to the second clash on whether it is unique. What have we told you? We've told you that this is necessary to get into national teams, stuff like that. And we told you that this is a recognized, but their only reply to this is how it isn't guaranteed. We'd rather take the chance of someone being able to get into a national team and have the opportunity and experience to actually get into a national team, rather than having opposition completely shut them out and not allow them to fulfill their potential or actually have any of the experience that they need to further on their debate career. So opposition in this sense is completely stunting their debate career and not allowing new people or young people to actually continue their debate career at all, right? What have opposition told us? They've also told us that schools are more accessible or something, and we on our side we've also told you that first of all, this is not mutually exclusive. We're completely just providing you with an extra opportunity for more people to actually get into debate, right? So in conclusion, what have we told you? We told you first of all about how they live in their very, very tense best case scenario, and even on that we win in that best case scenario. Secondly, we've told you about how we develop a better debater, how we give them more opportunities, and in addition to that, we've talked out their whole financial differences point. So if you want debate to continue and if you want young debaters to actually be able to improve, you must vote for side proposition. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Rob, reply for that speech. And thanks to everyone for a wonderful debate. Wishing you all the best in the subsequent rounds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, and thank you guys for the debate.
Thank you.